Hey,
Hello,
hey, hey,
everybody. Welcome. We
Jesse.
are
Wait, no. I gotta jump in right away because it's a learning party. Are you ready for this?
a learning party on a Friday or whenever you're watching the recording. So, welcome to another edition of Adobe for Education Live. We are so excited to be here. My name is Jesse Lubinsky, and with me is the fabulous Ann Kozma.
Oh my gosh. Hey, everybody. I'm so excited for this. Jesse, I know. Sorry I jumped in, but y'all, I'm so excited because we are sharing Adobe Express 101 for EdTech and curriculum leads. We're talking about how to jumpstart your school year. But Jesse, this is also a special session
I was about
because
to say.
ISTE is coming up, and some folks will be at ISTE and some folks might not be at ISTE.
So, taking a step back and really hit on the big thing. This is a special, not a ISTE edition of Adobe Live Education Edition. So what we're going to be doing today is if you don't know what ISTE is, first of all, ISTE is this amazing event that happens at the end of every June, where it's probably the largest gathering of EdTech professionals and teachers and educators across the world. It happens in different locations every year. This year, it is happening in San Antonio at the end of June, and our team will be there, including Ann and myself. But every year, we always love to have programming for those people who just can't make it to Texas in the middle of the Texas heat in San Antonio this year. And so, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing two of the sessions that we do at the Adobe booth. So, if you can't join us at the Adobe booth, you're going to get to see two of those sessions right now with Ann and myself. And we're going to have two other editions of Adobe Live coming up. One actually following this immediately, one happening next Friday, but you could catch them on the YouTube channel here that will go over four of those other sessions. So the sessions we're going to be covering today is we're going to be starting, as Ann mentioned, with Adobe Express 101 for EdTech and curriculum leads, jumpstarting your school year. And then we're going to be doing something near and dear to our hearts, which is sparking student imagination using generative AI. And I don't know if you know, AI is kind of a thing right now, Ann. I've
I
heard
mean,
like
I
one
think
of a
people,
thousand places.
yeah, people are talking about it, but Jesse, I just have to jump in and say, providing these sessions for folks who are not able to attend ISTE in person in San Antonio, this is something I love and respect and admire so much about our team here at Adobe is we want to empower everybody with these creativity tools and literally provide these as a resource for you. So as Jesse mentioned, if you're not in the conference hall able to see this in person, these are the sessions we will be presenting there. So we hope it sparks ideas and imagination, and you feel empowered to take and use these tools that Adobe is providing for you, not only to spark creativity and imagination, but how you know these tools are designed responsibly to empower you. And we're so excited. Jesse and I think there's a ton of energy in the room, also just because it's Friday, but it's stuff we love to talk about. And we're so excited that you're joining us for this special Adobe Live Education Edition. And Jesse, literally, it's a learning party. I always said that in my classroom
It's a learning
when I
part.
was at TOSA and in the work I do, with educators, the work that you do, that our team does, because community and a better together mindset literally guides what we do.
And one thing that we will get to do, hopefully, at the end of these two sessions during this Adobe Live edition, that we don't get to do on the show floor, we're going to jump into product and have a little fun. So add a little, right? A little cherry on top.
I'm
So
ready.
the first session we're going to be covering is Adobe Express 101 for EdTech and curriculum leads. And one of the things I love about going to these ISTE type events is we always have EdTech and curriculum leaders who are helping shape what learning is happening in our classrooms every day. And so what we're going to be focusing on today is Adobe Express and how it fits into instructional practice and why it should matter to folks who are sitting in those seats as curriculum and EdTech leads. And while we love Adobe Express, it's not just a flashy tool. It's really a powerful way to support deeper learning, elevate teaching, and align our tech and academic strategies in our school district. So we're going to dive right in. And really, what we want to do during this brief session is cover a few things. We want to, one, cover how to discover the importance of creative skills in the classroom. Why creativity isn't just an add-on, but a core instructional driver for the work we do in classrooms every day, and how it aligns to 21st century skills, whole child learning, and standards-based instruction.
Yeah, and Jesse, I know then we'll continue on and help
Yeah.
folks meet Adobe Express for Education, talk about how it supports bringing those creativity and future-ready skills to students across subject and across grade level spans, but specifically helping folks understand this is the go-to tool for teaching and learning.
And to that point, that third thing is really what are some of those top features we could share with you, especially for those people who are sitting in those instructional seats that really drive what happens in a school district? What are the best things that the features that can help save time, but also elevate the quality of student work, but also integrate into school
Yeah,
and district systems? So we're
yeah.
really excited to kind of jump into that, and that's what we'll be covering. And before we jump into like the product itself, Adobe, as you may know, does a ton of research around what's happening in schools across the country. And one of, the first data point that 70% of employers rank creative thinking as the most in-demand skill actually comes from a recent study from Forbes. The other two, that 85% of teachers say generative AI boosts creative thinking and 93% of teachers say generative AI increases student engagement, comes from a recent study that we did at Adobe that basically supports this idea that AI is something that we as educators can really be using to promote really positive thinking skills in the classroom, but also improve learning outcomes uh, in all of our classrooms and grade levels.
Right. And I know, I mean, not only empowering learning, Jesse, we talked about this in our own classrooms and communities before we stepped into these roles at Adobe, like the essential learning outcomes. We want our students, I always said, build their brain power, right? Literally build their brain power, retain the information knowledge according, their goals, all of those academic goals for those essential learning skills, but also empowering creativity. Like you can have both, achieve those learning goals, but also these stats on the screen, these skills are essential to successful learning, my opinion, too.
Takeaway I
The
get
data shows it.
when I see research like this is that embedding creativity into the work we do in classrooms is not something that's optional,
Yeah.
right? And what's nice is Adobe Express is designed to make it possible, even in core academic courses, to help infuse creativity into how we achieve learning outcomes in the classroom.
Yeah.
And one of the nice things is creativity is something that is a future ready skill. We talk all the time about how do we get kids ready for the future. And according to the World Economic Forum, creativity ranks among the top skills needed for tomorrow's workforce.
Yeah.
But
I, I I was just gonna say too, like giving them the opportunity to create not just to succeed in school, but like help them thrive in life, in work, and branch beyond a school-based experience and launch into the world. It is a future-ready skill. Um, I mean, yeah, I'm jumping in on that too, but like you think about these types of things, what does tomorrow's workforce need, right? Problem solving, collaboration, that people skill, the critical thinking, the creativity is such an essential part of that.
But even more importantly, it actually supports student well-being and helps allow for empathy building, which is something we're always trying to do with our students. Find opportunities to give them the ability to express themselves creatively, to build empathy, but also support student well-being in a post-pandemic world where we know there have been so many challenges to get students back to a place where they are fully comfortable in that learning environment and have the safe space to express themselves, explore their emotions, and re-engage in learning in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Jesse, I'm going to jump into the next one. So that the expression building empathy. So we know students are sharing stories, they illustrate points of view, they have these personal projects that they're bringing to life in different way. This also is a way to branch the understanding and the perspective of others. So I love this to broaden perspective, right? Evoking this sense of connection, the feeling of being seen and being heard as essential parts of the learning journey, right? But this makes a difference for how students show up in a classroom. So I love this piece about building empathy too through creative expression.
You know, not every student does well on the test, right? So I was a good test taker, but it was like literally the one thing I was really good at doing. It was all the other things I had a problem with. The, but not every student shines on a test. So how do we tap into um, a way where we can really see whether or not a student is being successful in the classroom? And that's what's so great about creative assignments is it gives us a new way to have students demonstrate their learning, and it reflects on it. It allows us to reflect on a student's strengths and help build their confidence. And finally, making learning visible. It's something we talk about all the time. We talk about the different strategies, student voice, student choice, student agency, but allowing students to actually get in there, really create, show how they've, understood and connected with concepts, and allow them to take their learning even further. It's powerful, it's personal, and it's oftentimes more meaningful than traditional assignments.
So I love this because as, curriculum leaders and learning leaders in a classroom, Jesse, we talk about this all the time. Adobe Express is truly empowering those alternative pathways to demonstrate mastery and understanding of a concept. So, and of course, I was an EdTech coach in my district. I love the
Right.
idea of leveraging technology to support and empower. This is all about digital equity as well. Modern communication skills, those creating, sharing, and building that confidence, supporting that social emotional learning, but cultivating student voice as well. These all directly support learning goals, academic goals, strategic plans, and those academic gains that everybody in the education community wants the students to
And
succeed. And
I'm sure it wouldn't surprise you. We've heard from both um, administrators, school leaders, and teachers alike about the value that creativity has had in their classroom and how Adobe Express helps students explore their creativity and really get access to all the things we've been talking about so far here today. And we're really excited to dive into that even further. So, what makes Adobe Express the right thing for students today in terms of this idea of creativity in the classroom? Well, not the least of which, up in the corner, you can see it's free for K-12 educators and students. Not just free, it's a premium version of Adobe Express that educators get access to, which gives access to a number of different features that you wouldn't have with just the free version. But these are really the four big points. When I think about the ed tech and curriculum leader role, and kind of like yourself, where you sat in that coach seat, I was a director of technology for a school district, and the things that I was concerned about are things like privacy concerns. Is it built for scale? How does it work? Does it work interoperably with all these other systems that we have? It does. But most importantly, it's pedagogically sound, right? So it's
yeah.
easy to scaffold into all of our existing systems. Now, one of the things we love about our tool is one, it engages with student imagination. I know that's Anne's like bread and butter is tapping into that imagination, right?
Yes, I mean, any way they can like engage with content. We always talked about like hard fun and disguised learning. And I believe in those things. When students are creating content, we are engaging the imagination, but it's making the learning visible in ways that are unique and authentic to them. It's boosting that student outcome. I know because I saw it in my own classroom, the way that students were retaining and remembering information because that's locking the information into the brain because they're actively digging into that. So to me, it's all about making learning fun. And that word fun is empowering in a different way, right? Because they're covering key concepts, but literally like engaging in it in almost like a more tactile way because they're creating, they're thinking, they're expressing. Maybe they're dancing, maybe they're drawing, maybe they're, making a video. It's that almost like total physical response of doing something to activate not only the brain power, but the imagination. So I could talk
And,
about that all day, Jesse.
and we've already tapped into a little bit, right? Building those future ready skills. Um, doing this work with specifically communication and collaboration in mind, and generative AI, which is actually leads us right into that critical thinking piece.
Yeah.
Now, since this is like a double feature of Not an ISTE, and you're going to be hearing more about the generative, there are responsible generative AI during the second session. I'll actually hold off on some of those talking points
Okay.
for the second, right, till we get to
Yeah.
that second
Yeah.
session. But if you're not familiar with the term Adobe Firefly, right, Adobe Firefly is like you think of it as the AI brain that powers all of our Adobe tools with responsible generative AI. We're going to dive right into that. But what you're going to see from when we talk a little bit more about it is from the admin perspective, right? Admin, students, and teachers have the controls, transparency, and data protections they need to be able to use generative AI responsibly. And finally, and this is not one to be understated, and as we both know, we've worked with many teachers over the course of our careers, saving teachers time.
Yeah.
That is the most valuable resource we have is time at our disposal because there's never enough of it. And the last thing someone wants to do is have to add another thing on that's going to, create more work to do. But the great part is with Adobe Express, teachers save time, simplify their planning with and grade specific guidance, whether it's templates or some of our guided activities. It's easy to assign and review creative assignments in real time.
In real
So
time.
just
Yeah.
one of the really great benefits to Adobe Express.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it.
And I feel like this is like your playground right here on this screen, talking through like some of what's available to teachers
Yeah.
in Adobe
Okay.
Express.
So I love this slide because it shows that visual. And Jesse, I like I'm a visual learner. I know people, whether you're like a verbal expression or auditory processor, verbal processor, I'm a visual processor. And I love this simply to show people what they can jump into. And when we're talking about creativity, maybe it's a tactile thing, but we don't just mean that glittering glue, right? We mean purposeful creation. And you can see on the screen from videos to presentation to data visualization, visual storytelling, and so much more. I love those animations. Let's talk for a second about infographics and web pages, and we will be discussing that responsible generative AI, but folks, the visuals represented on screen show us all kinds of skills and digital creation tools that allow and support the standards that you're teaching across English language arts, sciences, communication, maths, history projects, and so much more. So you enable this across devices and learning levels, and it is a way, Jesse, not only to bridge creativity instruction. Let's talk about enabling and fostering student agency, skill development at scale. And I love this because Adobe Express truly, truly, truly powers learning across all subject areas. And these things that folks can make, the content they can create, literally empowers every student to share authentically in their own unique way, leveraging these tools. And
Can I just say I love how for the global audience you did the maths. That was very like, all right, that was inclusive of
listen,
everyone. But you said something I really want to call back to, though. You talked about this as purposeful creation, and I think that's really important to hone in on because I think a lot of times when we talk about creativity in the classroom, some people think of it as like glitter and glue and if sometimes creativity can be misconstrued as loosey goosey,
yeah,
and this is all, like you said, uh, aligned with standards, very designed to improve instructional outcomes. It is not loose, it is very intentional and
yeah.
can all be done with all of these different types of projects that you can create in Adobe Express. You really summed that up beautifully.
Oh my
Um,
God.
you know, one of the things that's nice is it can where is Adobe Express isn't just the tool itself, it's all of the supports that come with it that allow a school leader to really kind of sell this idea and value of creativity to their staff, right? To teachers, to other administrators. And there's a bunch of things that happen within Adobe Express that allow for that to happen in a really nice way. First, There are hundreds of templates and guided activities that lower the barrier to entry and really align to what teachers are already teaching. Now, if you're not already familiar with our guided activities, if we have time at the end, that's the thing Anne and I really wanted to make sure we shared with you. But guided activities, think of them as like, super powered templates. Imagine if you had it, the scaffolded learning right in the template itself so that a teacher can share with students and have that step by step or video instruction to help them do the work. It's right there for them. Or as the admin, I know I did a ton, and I'm sure Anne, you did this as a coach. I did a ton of tech PD for my teachers. What I wouldn't have done to have that, both the video as
Yeah.
well as the stepper right in product to support so that I wasn't feeling that need to go work with every single individual in the classroom. And
Yeah.
both of those are in there for each of our guided activities.
I
So
just
if
want to make a point with it, Jesse, as a lifelong learner, and I think many of us would describe ourselves that way in education. We are continuously learning and up-leveling our own craft as educators. But this is a tool not only for the teachers that can be used to help them learn a workflow, push the buttons, gain their confidence in how to use this tool. So it's a learning tool for us. It could also be leveraged in real time or in flexible time as that teaching tool live in the moment. And
Yep.
I love sharing guided activities. So if y'all are listening and you're like, wait, what? We
What?
will show you game changer.
One thing I will say though is putting my admin hat on though, there definitely has been this thing in the past where whenever I was introducing a new tool to my school district, I would have to think of, well, how am I supporting teachers beyond this? Do I have to provide additional professional development, right? All of a sudden, I need a PD plan for every single tool that I'm bringing in. The beautiful part about this is, in addition to all that those scaffolded resources and templates we have available, we also had self-paced professional development that are courses where you can earn a badge that are right in the product. So it's like a gamified way for them to learn, but also allow your teachers to quickly onboard to the tool. So there's no huge lift or, as the leader, worrying about how do I provide that support. And in addition to the actual courses, there are a bunch of little like learning modules for specific skills or things that you may want to know, like how do I do this or how do I change that? That's all in the product as well. Like an incredible amount of support that's there.
And they're bite size. They're bite size, those little modules. We're talking a minute, 30 seconds, three
Right.
minutes. But this self-paced, professional development course that's inside there, I'll pop it up on screen, Jesse, at the end when we're showing inside the product. It's a fantastic resource.
Finally, I know we're going to talk more about the responsible generative AI piece here, but the part that's important to talk about for us right now is the admin controls. The fact that there is the ability for um, for admins to turn that off if they don't want it, or to make adjustments. But most importantly for you to understand at this point is Adobe Express, and which again uses Adobe Firefly, never trains on teacher or student projects, and it actually shows authenticity and transparency with AI content credentials, which is in this day and age where we're always struggling with like what's real. Did someone create something? Is that something they grabbed off the internet? That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Right? So curriculum and EdTech leaders can confidently lead implementation of Adobe Express without having to like reinvent the wheel from scratch.
Yeah. And I say that with pride too, that like this is the responsible generative AI piece, but getting to reinforce that it never trains on teacher or student projects and it shows that authenticity and transparency with those content credentials. Like I'm proud. I'm so proud to say that.
And that aside, it also continues to help teachers save time in a number of different ways, right? We're not going to dive too deep into this right now, but we know that time is one of your most precious resources. With Express Classrooms and the assignments feature, teachers can assign, review, showcase student work without extra tools.
Mhm.
And the new galleries feature, which I love. Look at just even looking at it on the screen, I get excited about it because we always love to find ways to share student work in a meaningful way. And our new class galleries feature supports collaboration and peer feedback, which we know drives deeper student engagement and higher order thinking. So this is like curriculum, assessment, social emotional learning, like working together in one place with one powerful tool.
I love it, Jesse. Oh my gosh.
And you touched on this before, but there's like curriculum alignment all throughout the work we do, right? So we have standards aligned projects across grade levels and subject areas, right? That help from anything from like persuasive writing to scientific explanations or historical storytelling. And it allows us to save time with like plug and play standards aligned templates. We can easily integrate creativity into core subjects, and we can feel confident that these projects support learning goals. Um, I mean, Adobe Express is a natural fit for project-based learning, UDL, right, Universal Design for Learning, and other frameworks that are already being used by schools everywhere.
Yeah. Oh my God. And Jesse, just I know as you go to the last this next slide,
Now,
literally,
jump over.
yeah. Um, Going into like the feeling and the appreciation that all of Adobe Express literally works within the existing systems, right? It's running smoothly on all kinds of devices, Chromebooks to tablets to desktop, but the idea of um, Adobe Express, really, truly, any device in any classroom, I love it. And then I talk about that IT piece for a minute. Like they can help manage those generative
Yeah,
AI
so
features. Speak about
this is
that in the
something we
admin
touched on
tools.
really quickly before, but like it allows you to manage generative AI features and control access.
Yeah,
So if you're supporting deployment or setting tech policy, you can feel confident that Adobe Express aligns to whatever your IT standards are. But it also integrates with your SSO, your LMS, you name it, whether it's like Canvas, ClassLink, Clever, Google. It works with what you've got, which means you're not layering on additional complexity, which as a district admin, particularly as a tech admin, is like, I'm not introducing something to my district if it's that complicated, right? So we know that it's easy to set up, to roll out to our educators and students. There's no extra sign-ons, no new logins, and it is COPPA and FERPA compliant. It's like one of the first questions district admins ask, and you could put your trust in your student and educator data knowing it is private and secure.
yeah.
So quick summary for this one, right? We discovered the importance of creative skills in the classroom. You met, if you haven't already met, Adobe Express for Education. And we discussed some of the top Express features for both teachers and leaders, which is, and like, great to do. If you're looking for more information, you can scan this QR code and get all the information on how to deploy licenses to students. But yep, take a quick shot of that. And with that was the first of our two
Yay!
sessions. And
Oh
we are
my
just
God.
at the halfway point, and we're doing so well.
And Jesse, too, I know, folks, it's so awesome for you to be getting like a peek into these slides. I know we're jumping into another session and we're going to be talking about sparking student imagination with generative AI, but we will be showing those guided activities as mentioned and show you how to find and access all of this inside of Adobe Express for Education when you are in product. But we hope that those ideas truly, truly help you feel like you're ready to get jump started, whether you're starting the new school year, getting ready to start the new school year, and just exploring learning. Definitely
And,
love. I mean, Jesse, I love talking about this stuff. So,
and speaking again, once we're jump started, then we got to spark, right?
hey.
Right? This is welcome to our second session, which is sparking student imagination with generative AI.
Mhm.
So that should be popping up on your screen momentarily, and you'll get to see, follow along with us for our second session. Here we go. And I just love how generative AI can unlock student creativity in ways that are like powerful, practical, but also responsible.
Yep.
And so we're going to dive right in. And again, we talked about that curriculum, like we talked about it from the district leader standpoint. Now we kind of want to get into what it looks like in the classroom from that generative AI standpoint. And so what we want to talk about is how we can spark student creativity and critical thinking using Adobe Express and generative AI. And we're going to do that in a few ways. So first, we've already introduced you to Adobe Express, but what we really want to do is talk about how we could bring creative learning to life in your classroom through the generative AI tools that are in Express that can be used meaningfully and responsively to amplify student voice and deepen engagement.
Yeah. And Jesse, the second part of it, we'll talk about deepening that student thinking, the creativity with the generative AI. And this goes from things like seeing how the tools can help your students brainstorm, iterate, and even reflect with those generative AI tools. But that is part of the learning process to literally help them hold on to their ideas, right? And kind of like the journey and the learning process, it all weaves together to actually own the content, retain the information, and up-level their thinking, their knowledge, and their creativity all in one.
Yeah, and finally, we'll go through a few project ideas that you could use that are ready to use, that blend creative expression, generative AI features, and also real academic outcomes. So you can leave with something that you can assign tomorrow. Well, although not tomorrow, because technically this should be happening over the summer, but tomorrow meaning the next time that you have, right, exactly.
Whenever
Tomorrow is
you're
relative to whatever works for you, right?
today, tomorrow, and always, whenever you're watching this. I love it.
So we already talked a little bit about why creativity is so essential in the classroom. If you were with us for the first session, you heard us talk about the idea. Really, we talked through all of this already, but just to quickly recap, we talked through this idea that generative AI is a future-ready skill. We talked about how creativity, in particular, supports student well-being and allows us to build empathy within our students. We also talked about not every student does best on the test, right? Sometimes we need to find other ways to get students to get connected, feel seen and heard, and really be able to, through creative assignments, reflect on those strengths and build their confidence.
Yeah.
And we also talked about how creativity makes learning visible and how important that is in the classroom setting.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, Jesse, going back into so many feelings and memories of watching my students gain confidence in themselves, their creative skills, their ability. But I always use the words share, celebrate, and showcase learning. And that's truly like that last comment right there about creation making learning visible. How do we get what's in here in our heads? How do we get what's in our heart out? We represent that in different ways. And I always say, whether it's dance, spoken word, musically, like some kind of mathematical thinking, like this is why we talk about this with such excitement, is because students are actually able to share, celebrate, and showcase their learning in these dynamic ways.
Now, what if your students could take their wildest ideas, their most imaginative, off the wall, what if thoughts, and see them come to life in seconds?
Okay.
Right? So picture it. A student dreams up an invention like a smart wardrobe that automatically updates the outfit of the day based on their mood, the weather, their schedule. But in Adobe Express, they could type that idea into a prompt, and just like that, generative AI turns that vision into a visual. Suddenly, that idea isn't just in our students' head, it's real. They're excited to build it, explain it, even pitch it. These are the type of creative moments that are already happening in classrooms around the world. So with students using Adobe Express and generative AI to visualize concept, solve problems creatively, and share their ideas in new powerful ways, just imagine what can happen in your own classroom. So that's really what we want to talk about today. How you can use Adobe Express to help students visualize complex ideas, boost their confidence through self-expression, and most importantly, use generative AI responsibly as a creative partner that supports student thinking, not as a shortcut for replacing it.
Say that part again. Say that part again.
See if I can do it again. But we want to make sure that our students are using generative AI responsibly, right? One of the biggest concerns teachers come to us with is AI is replacing or simply doing work for the students. We love to view it as a partner in creativity for a student to help them visualize those ideas that they wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. Like what you're seeing right here, this isn't something necessarily that a student would be able to draw or create, but with the help of generative AI, they can have that fully imagined vision right there within seconds.
Yeah.
So again, quick recap, because this is something that we shared during that first session. We don't want to have to literally repeat everything, but we want to make sure that that you see that Adobe Express engages student imagination, helps build those future-ready skills, provides an opportunity for creative thinking, and we did say we'd come back to this now, but really empowering student expression and critical thinking skills with responsible generative AI learning skills that helps students best prepare for careers today and in the future. And with Firefly, right, in Adobe Express, admin, students, teachers have the controls, transparency, and data protections they need to use generative AI responsibly. And it's something we talked about before, those time-saving tips that are so important.
Yeah.
Now, how does generative AI fit into teaching and learning? Well, we mentioned this before, but it does not train on those right. It doesn't train on teacher or student projects, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing students use generative AI to visualize those ideas, brainstorm and explore new angles, prompts, perspectives, right? Helping them overcome those creative blocks and build momentum in their work and expressing creativity in new multimodal formats, right?
Yeah.
So like combining generative AI, generative images into writing, voice, video, or animation. But let's be real, there are definitely questions, Anne, that I think people are wondering. Is Gen AI
Yeah.
safe for students? Will it replace me as the teacher? Won't students just use it to cheat? And these are important questions, and Adobe's approach is built with educators in mind. So
Yeah.
here's what sets us apart, right? We talked about those admin level controls that allow students to turn generative AI on or off and adjust by age group or use case. That's so important. No student data is ever used to train the Adobe models, meaning your classroom stays private and protected. And through our content authenticity initiative, we're embedding transparency into everything. So students and teachers can clearly see what's been AI generated and what hasn't been. So
Yeah.
with those guardrails in place, you can think of Adobe Express as that thinking partner, not a shortcut.
Yeah, Jesse, I think those three things are so critical to just help folks like this session is also about awareness and understanding like what folks have access to, but those admin level controls, right, that is the toggle that individual districts or the admin that's deploying this can determine, turn it on, turn it off, adjust it by age group, etc. The no student data ever, no student data is ever used to
Eva.
train Adobe's ever. Never ever, right? Like
So
it
she
is
said
not
ever, and I'm
training.
saying the New York version. It's Eva,
Yeah.
EVH,
And
Eva.
I'm channeling my good friend Jornay saying never ever. So I'm yep. So like no student data is ever used to train Adobe's models, but those that content authenticity initiative too. I think this is something that's so interesting because people are like, what's AI? What's not? And so this is literally helping people see clearly like what's been AI generated and what hasn't. And these are great conversations. Well, I
And this
have,
is actually, you know, to kind of keep going with that point, for educators, safety and privacy is the key to their trust in technology. And these are some of the things we just discussed, but that's why it's designed to be safe in school, right? There are guardrails on those generative AI prompts. So it encourages appropriate use. So, like, for example, if a student puts in a prompt which may generate content that isn't safe, right?
yeah.
They'll get a return message that informs them why the generation isn't taking place.
All right, and I'm going to reiterate this for the second point. Adobe does not use student or teacher projects to train its generative AI models.
As she
Jesse,
said earlier, never ever.
yeah,
Shout out to
right?
Courtney, our good buddy.
But
Uh, and also
reinforcing that
for
point,
options,
right?
right? You have the ability, if you're a district that loves some of what you're hearing with this idea of creativity, but you're like not quite there yet, or you're in the process of generating or your policy around AI use in the classroom, you could always turn that off for now. A lot of the work we do, it actually you could still do all of these projects and things, within a non-AI setting.
Yeah.
And so, what can your students? We spend so much time talking about like the framework of like generative AI, but like, what can you do? What's the nitty gritty? Well, the first thing, you could generate an image, right? Students can write descriptions and see their ideas come to life. One of the things I love to talk about, Anne, or examples, I don't know if you remember. You may not have been teaching back in this day. I was, so I'm like dating myself here. But like when I started teaching, people were like, "You can't use Google search for anything. We don't want our kids Googling." And now it's like a ubiquitous thing that kids do, right? Everyone Google searches. But think about it, and how many times have you spent like 20 minutes or so trying to find the right image? You're like searching for the image, and you get something that's maybe like 70% of what you wanted. Well, what if you could just, instead of spending that time searching for the thing you wanted, you created it using your own words and descriptive language to get exactly the thing you want. Well, that you could do through generate image. Well, what if you already have an image and you want to put something in it? Well,
Okay,
that's
but hang on.
oh
Before you talk
yeah,
about insert object, I want to say about this first one, right? Like the prompt you see on screen, a 3D wardrobe that automatically updates based on mood and weather. Jesse, I love knowing what a prompt is for a generated like an AI gen image, but I
yeah.
want to talk about how this is descriptive language or the opportunity for students to use that academic vocabulary. I was a first grade teacher. I used sentence frames. I use word charts. I used like environmental print. There are so many ways that educators can help support their students or scaffold for their students. How do you write a good prompt to generate that first image and then iterate on it if needed? And what you're about to say about inserting an object is to take that and even up level it based on the work and the detail that they've done in their prompt. And insert object, I use this all the time. I think it's phenomenal. And when I show people what you can do with this piece too, they're like, wait a minute, that's even more next level.
So one of the things I love, and by the way, one thing that to note is even after you create an image in Adobe Express, you could always still go see what that prompt is. But what if I made the image, I love it, but then it's like, oh, I want to add something to it. Well, that's where that insert object comes in, and you could actually remove object as well, which I
Yeah.
love doing, by the way, for like vacation photos, like get rid of all the people in the photo so I don't have to wait there 9 years for everyone to move out of the way. But this allows students to add depth and complexity to their ideas, right? So like you know, what are the visible traits of a character? How does a character interact with their environment? What other, as I kind of get deeper into the idea, what else do I need or what maybe do I not want there? Well, you can
Yeah.
insert or remove objects, simply building onto those layers of what you've already created.
Yeah.
You could also add text effects. So I always love to think of it as like imagining a font, right? Like as students explore like the interconnectedness of text and visual metaphors, right? They can deepen their understanding of a character and better explore the idea creatively and engage their audience. So where is this useful, right? It's useful for hard to illustrate topics, for future goals or imagined careers, but it also helps enhance storytelling and the design work we want our students doing. So you can see this is very rich stuff we're talking about. This is not going back to that last session when we talked about this idea of, you know, really purposeful intent with our creativity. This speaks very clearly to that.
Oh my gosh, the bringing visual metaphors to life. I love this. And you just said imagining your own font. I love fabric, clouds, and happy as the example. Jesse, when I share this, I typically use cactus. And then the text effects that I'm doing is a spiky cactus. I use pizza, and then of course, I'm not going to ignite any kind of like debate about do you put pineapple on a pizza? So I used pepperoni. So I always do like a pepperoni pizza example. And the other one, I think most recently I've used is outer space, but literally, literally enhancing the design and the storytelling aspect or the visual aspect of what you're creating. If y'all have not tried text effects, definitely try that because I feel like maybe that's a lesser used feature inside Adobe Express. And it is so cool.
And so let's take like a closer look at one of the easiest and most engaging ways to like start using generative AI in
Okay.
your classroom. And this is one of our guided activities called create your dream product, right? So it's a multi-step scaffolded activity that walks students through the creative process from ideation to execution. And what it does is it not only builds creative confidence, but it also builds critical thinking, communication, and Gen AI fluency along the way. So here's how it works. Step one, ideate. right? So students begin by writing a text prompt. You can see the prompt here, a wardrobe that automatically updates your outfit each day based on your mood, the weather, your schedule. So um, what this allows them to do is, right, students enter that prompt into Adobe Express, and Gen AI brings an example of that visual to life. So you can see in step two, we have that visual. But what do we do with that visual once we have it, right? We got that idea, that first idea of what we might want. Well, let's refine. So once the image is generated, students don't just stop there. They use like that insert object, remove object. They use the AI tools to do those adjustments, add details, and iterate until the image it accurately represents what their idea is, right? But it's not just adding into the AI image. They could always pull from Adobe stock, right? Add
Yeah.
images, add their own videos, whatever you have. And that's what I love about it is it can be whatever you want it to be, right? It's endless in terms of the imagination that students can apply here because they can use all of the different aspects of Adobe Express along with that generative AI. But they could get in there and really do revision, attention, show their attention to detail and demonstrate iterative thinking, which is something we want to do, right? We talk about the design process in schools and how we want students to kind of go through that cycle of, generating that first idea, but then continuing to iterate until they get feedback, they keep going back and making it exactly the way they want it. And finally, in step three, communicate. So what can we do with that image? We can take it to make a promotional poster or ad, which combines the generated image with text that allows them to pitch their product, right? So they're doing visual storytelling, persuasive writing, and even basic marketing concepts, all within this creative
Yeah.
student-centered project, right?
Jesse, I love that. And again, the words, like when you talk about the communication of it after going through that ideation, the refinement and the editing, and I love like the iteration process, right? But the communication, again, the words that I heard in my head when you said communicating the product in all those ways that students could actually like share and celebrate it. Again, share, celebrate, and showcase
Yep.
all while it's student centered, relevant to their curricular area, their age or subject, content. So this literally is the design thinking process.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
They're not just creating for fun, they're
yeah,
learning to revise, explain, and improve their ideas.
yep,
And I didn't even mention the best part, particularly about this one, right? So when they finish, students earn a Gen AI skills badge, right? And it's a fun, motivating way to recognize their growth and celebrate their learning. So this activity is just one of those guided activities, which is standards aligned, fully scaffolded, and ready to assign, right? Through that classrooms feature that we talked about. So
yeah.
it's a perfect entry point for teachers who want to try Gen AI in a meaningful, low lift way. It's creative, it's relevant, and it's a powerful way to bring, you know, future ready learning into our classroom immediately.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. Well, Jesse, jump into the next slide and we're going to show another example of how generative AI can support STEM learning, especially when it's coming to helping students, whether it's explaining like complex or abstract concepts visually. So jump into this one.
Yeah. So this is another example of how generative AI can support STEM learning in particular. And this one really helps students explain like complex ideas or abstract concepts visually, right? So the assignment for this one is create a visual explaining the greenhouse effect, right? That's a core topic in environmental science, but sometimes it can be a little bit hard for students to fully grasp and even harder for them to explain or represent visually using traditional tools. And that's where the Gen AI and Adobe Express really becomes a powerful thinking partner. Students can type in a prompt using that text to image tool, right? They could generate symbolic visuals that make abstract concepts feel real. So, for example, they might make an image of like a melting globe under a heat lamp or trapped heat waves bouncing between the earth and a glass-like atmosphere, or even like a symbolic greenhouse with sunbeams pouring in and heat struggling to escape. And those type of visuals help students make sense of invisible scientific processes by giving them something tangible to analyze and interpret and explain. Another one I love, by the way, is taking um, the like walking on pins and needles, raining
Oh,
cats, things
yep.
that don't exist, right? But that we can have a visual representation that is really powerful.
Yeah.
Um, But we don't stop at imagery. Once students generate the visual, they combine it with explanatory text and build a visual report or infographic right in Adobe Express. So they're not just illustrating content, they're actively communicating their understanding in a multimodal format.
Yeah.
This kind of project blends essential STEM skills, right? So, uh, science content knowledge is the first one, right? They break down and explain a complex system. Two, visual literacy,
Yeah.
right? They're choosing or revising imagery to accurately represent key concepts. And then the final third one is symbolic reasoning, right? So they're connecting these metaphorical visuals and with real scientific meaning and articulating those connections to others. So this is a powerful way to make student thinking visible while also building on STEM fluency and communication skills in one creative, low barrier project. And best of all, Anne, it's engaging. Come on, it's fun.
Hey.
It's not like one of those old, kind of boring things that projects that, you know, that I might do in my class back in the day. No, I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? Like it's something that's really fun and gets students excited. And they feel ownership because the visuals are personalized, their ideas uniquely represented. And with Adobe Express, Gen AI isn't just supporting creativity,
Yeah.
it's supporting deeper, connected learning across all different content areas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jesse, let's tie it all together. This next slide is
Do it.
yeah, I mean, it's so awesome. Like, creativity is not just extra, it is essential. And we know that creativity belongs at the heart of learning, builds confidence, empathy. It helps students show what they know in ways that maybe a test or some kind of traditional assessment just can't.
Right. Um, you know, I love that this statement that Adobe Express just makes it possible, right?
Mhm.
It just allows students to have the tools to turn ideas into videos, posters, web
Yeah.
pages, infographics, and it's backed by standards aligned templates, classroom workflows, and educator first controls.
Yeah.
Like we said, Gen AI is meant to be a thinking partner, not a shortcut. It is We've reframed it here as a tool for exploration, not replacement, right? So, from visualizing future careers to explaining complex STEM topics, it's perfect to help students think critically, to reflect, and to create with purpose. So you can spark imagination and deepen learning with tools that are responsible, accessible, and built for education.
Yeah.
So, you know, think about the ways that you could take this back to your classroom. Now, Anne, what a shocker. Anne and I, the two talkers, talked our way into not leaving ourselves enough time to get into product, but you can do that yourself by learning more about Adobe Express for Education for your school. You can scan that QR code or the one from earlier to find out how to get free Adobe Express Education accounts for your school, to dive in and see some of those ready to use resources that are available for your school. And most importantly, well, second most importantly, because I guess you got to get into the product first. Join our community newsletter to join with Anne and I on all the amazing work that we do. And if you're interested in our Adobe Creative Educator Leader Program, you can get to that at adobe.ly/ACE Leader. And that's an amazing way if you are someone who feels like they take a leadership role in the work of driving creativity in your school, to partner with Anne and myself and our team on all the incredible ways to make it happen in your schools. And
Yep.
this was just a little sprinkling of the ISTE love, right? Like, so we have 4 more Not a ISTE sessions that we're going to be sharing. Anne's about to dive into another one shortly. And thank you so much for joining us for these 2 amazing Not a ISTE sessions. We hope to see you there, but if we don't, we hope to hear from you online.
Yeah, appreciate it so much, folks, and thank you for listening in. And Jesse, I think you hit the nail on the head. Adobe Express makes it possible to bring ideas to life across subjects. So, y'all, thank you for tuning in for this, and we're here to support. We're here to help. We're here to celebrate you and the incredible ways you bring learning to life with Adobe Express. Jesse, thank you. It was
Thank
fast and
you.
furious and so much fun.
Can't wait to see everyone again soon.
All right, y'all.